The secret to drawing with line is in this book. My scandalous opinion is that Albrecht Dürer was not a very good painter. Every time I look at his paintings, it just seems like he'd rather be drawing. But remember, I'm talking about this in the context of his prints and his drawings. Clearly, he's got the chops for doing paintings, but the thing is, there's something about his focus and range of play and experimentation that he does with his line drawings that I just don't see in his paintings. To me, it really looks like in his paintings that he's covering up a lot of the extraordinary line work and structure that he gets in his drawings and prints. Dürer is truly at his finest when he's with line. There are so many artists across history that have the most exquisite handling of line. But what really distinguishes Dürer's lines is that he is so sensitive to every single concern you might ever have with a line drawing. He's so strategic about when he uses a line that's super long versus one that's very short. Notice here that he uses longer lines, especially in the hair. That's where he's really trying to get a feeling of flow. The shorter lines, he really reserves those for much tighter, more detailed specific forms. For example, if you look at the lips, there's so many short lines, and that creates a really palpable feeling of form. And then all the lengths that are in between. He has the most extraordinary range of value that I've seen in line. What he chooses to make a dark or light line, it's totally on purpose. In this drawing, you can see that the people are a lot darker in value with the line work, but then see that the background is much lighter because he's trying to push that background into the distance, and those darker lines tend to pop out a lot more in the people. Certainly we have his engravings, in which case there is no gradient with the line, but he does some major gymnastics in his engraving that make up for that. He's so specific about the direction that his line is going in, especially in his images of the human figure. You really understand the anatomy of that hand depending on the direction that the lines are going in. These white lines that are on the fingers, they show the roundness of them. That's what gives his figures so much volume in his drawings, is that he's really explaining to you anatomically what's happening. Dürer really understood how lines group together, but he also knew the impact of a single hair doing its own thing. This portrait has multiple groups of crosshatched lines that are parallel to each other, they cross over, but then there's that one hair that's underneath his ear that really calls attention to itself. He understood that there were so many ways you could overlap a group of lines on top of each other. Sometimes it's more like a grid, and other times it's just a slight shift of direction to have those groups of lines that are overlapping on top of each other. Dürer knew when he wanted to make lines that were parallel and straight, and ones that looked all frilly and curly. Having those round organic lines against really rigid geometric ones, that really creates an incredible spectrum of line quality. He varied the density of the lines. There are some areas where it's mostly wide of the page with just a couple strokes, but then other areas where it's just 10 layers of lines on top of each other to create this incredible richness of tone. Drawing with line can be really easily underestimated. Line really is the absolute first thing that we do when we sit down to draw. A line is super concrete. If I have an area of tone, that is not so easy to really be certain about. Most people can grasp the idea of what a line is fairly quickly, but really understanding the extraordinary range of language that line can be, that is very difficult. Dürer's best paintings really are the ones where he has a lot of line work. This is a sumptuous watercolor of a wing. The gradients are so fine and sensitive, but really what makes this painting is the line work that he has over the watercolor, which creates a means of articulation of the textures that provide structure, but also feel incredibly light and delicate. This painting too, what really makes the volume and the space convincing here, it's the highlights in the hair. The face has a sense of fleshiness. It's got some fairly good shadows, but compared to the hair, the face is so mushy and flat. Those hair strands on the right-hand side, the way that they're emerging from the darkness, and then the out-of-control beard that he has lines wildly chasing each other. He's so excited about the lines in the hair. I feel like he wasn't that interested in painting the face by comparison. I see that he exaggerates and distorts the anatomy so much more in his drawings compared to his paintings. When we're doing something that we really feel in our element with, we do tend to be more playful. His paintings, I don't really see him doing that as much. He tends to stay more with real life proportions. He doesn't do these just bizarre, sagging knuckles and odd, spindly fingers. Artists work in so many different media, but I think a lot of us have one media where we feel that the way we express ourselves feels the most fluid compared to some of the other ones. When we have that fluidity in our visual language, that's when we are usually the most daring and experimental and willing to just go off the rails. Dürer's drawings are so detailed and accomplished, it's hard to imagine that his drawings ever started as anything less than that, which is why looking at his early stage sketches, you understand what's underneath those dense layers of line. Dürer really knew how to do gesture drawing. I know so much about this one figure, what he's doing, what he's carrying. I love how he articulates here an entire town, what looks like just a bunch of random squares, circles, and arches. With drawings that are that detailed, we always assume that the detail is what must really make the piece. But Dürer really understood what it took to lay out the structure of his drawings quickly at the very beginning. In Dürer's drawings, he gets started immediately when it comes to range of lines, the various directions. Sometimes people will tell me that they're not ready to do those types of things, but Dürer shows you that from the very second he begins, he's already thinking about, do I put these lines going diagonally or do these intersect with these? It has to start at the beginning. This is not something that you can wait till later to address. When you're doing a sustained drawing, it's so easy to say, well, I'll do that later. I'm not ready to do that thing. Dürer was ready to think about line. Every single stroke in his drawing mattered and had a place in that world. When I was in graduate school, we visited the print room at the Metropolitan in New York City. They put Dürer's Adam and Eve engraving right in front of me with no frame. That was one of the most incredible moments in my life. I just need to teleport all of you with me to that print room because seeing that print in person changed my life. It really did. I have never seen line work like that. There's also an Adam and Eve painting, and it's a really good comparison when you have the same image but articulated in two different media. I think most people would be pretty happy to be able to do a painting like this, but if you compare it to his engraving, this painting is so dull and boring. In this painting, there's a really dramatic chiaroscuro lighting situation. You've got that really deep, rich, dark black and a little bit of the ground. But you will not believe what he does in his engraving. This background has so much happening. There are multiple animals, and I just discovered today, and I've seen this print a million times, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little tiny goat. Adam's foot is stepping on a rat's tail. The forest is super sumptuous. Those leaves look like they're curling towards us. There's extraordinary fluidity in the lines on the ground. He was enjoying every minute of making this engraving. There's a bull in the corner, a bird, a rabbit, and I think that's a cat. The hair is so sculptural in Eve. It looks like really beautifully sculpted handmade pasta. No contest. That painting feels like he had to do it for his painting class. Oh God, I would not want to be in a painting class with Dürer. It'd be even worse to have him in your drawing class. Ugh, that would make me quit art in 2 seconds. Maybe it's a good thing that he was around in the 1400s. If you can, try to go to the library and find an oversized book on Dürer like this one, which is destroying my wrist. I'm still seeing things in this engraving that I haven't seen before. Really, Dürer had a love affair with line, and we see him embracing every single one. Geez, I feel like I could lift weights with this book.